Hi, this is Michael P. Coleman, Content Director for Brother Be Well. Thanking you for checking out this series, this trauma and healing series brought to you by Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative. Hi, I'm Michael P. Coleman, Content Director for Brother Be Well. Today, in one of a series of Brother Be Well conversations on trauma and healing, made possible by the support of Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative, we're talking about journaling and storytelling as methods for alleviating the symptoms often managed by the 223.4 million people, 70% of the US population, who have experienced trauma. Joining me for this conversation on journaling and storytelling is integrated behavioral health specialist and Brother Be Well clinical advisor, Julio Cruz. Julio, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, Michael. Thank you for having me back.
Thanks a lot. Let's get right into this conversation, Julio. I appreciate you. As a writer, I was excited about this one. I've known for a while now, and I guess it was kind of intuitive that writing can be healing. It certainly is for me. As I got ready to talk to you, I found out that I'm far from the only writer who feels that way. And in fact, there's a lot of empirical data to back that claim up. If you would, please talk to us about the connection between writing and healing.
Absolutely. I think that it's a very easy way and very inexpensive, also, an effective way to practice some coping mechanisms, right? Like putting your thoughts and your feelings into a piece of paper, or like, you can do a journal through an app or the computer, whichever way it is, that allows you to like get out all those emotions and explore them and see them from different eyes of just those words and those emotions and those feelings living in your head.
There's a lot of distinction. People talk about journaling and storytelling kind of synonymously. I don't know that they're completely synonymous. So let's talk about really journaling here. So, most people think about it as a daily activity. You sit and kind of record either highlights of the day, or some people do it verbatim. How specifically can keeping a journal help you with healing from trauma?
I think that I can speak from my own experience. It allows me the opportunity to pour on a piece of paper what my experiences are. Like there's little things that trigger my PTS, my post-traumatic stress disorder, at times in my daily life, right? So I carry a journal at work. I have one at home, and it allows me the opportunity to not let those feelings like fester in my head. I just put it onto a piece of paper, and it's kind of like giving the power of those emotions to that piece of paper, right? To be like, hey, there it is. It's now yours. And I can revisit it whenever I feel like it.
I really love that. And I used to be better at journaling than I am now. I've gotten away from it lately, but I sometimes regret it. We're 2 years into at the time we're recording this, 2 years into the COVID pandemic, and I really wish on day one of that COVID shutdown I had started a journal because my emotions were all over the place, and it could have helped me to kind of process things and, as you said, put it away and then move on. It's a great technique, I think.
Absolutely. And it's something that you can always go and look back to, right? I've been journaling for a very long time. So I remember when I first started journaling and like talking about like to my book about like my experiences, how I felt, the thoughts that I had. I went back to look at some of the journals that I have from the past, right? That I was like um, having particular emotions about like the pandemic that some of us lived through, the 80s and 90s, and all the people that we lost, and how how that felt. And it has helped me to look back and be like, hey, there's hope. This shall also pass. there is some similar feelings that I have now, that like looking at the way I felt before that, I'm like, how did I go through it? How did I process all of this? And it's helping me to look at some of the emotions that I have now.
Wow.
So it's not only good for the moment, but something to look back to when we are going through certain feelings, emotions, traumas.
It's a great tip. I hadn't thought about it as being something that you could look back to, and you've always got it there with you. So I'm gonna grab one of mine from behind me and take a look back at years past and see how that helps.
Absolutely. I think it's kind of like your own encyclopedia, right? Like, remember, some of us who are older, we used to have like volumes of books of encyclopedias where, like, now you can go into Google and search whatever it is. Think about like your paper Google, or like for some people who do like application journaling or online journaling, you can go back and look into it and research how did I feel like back in 2020 when this started, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's fascinating. Be a lot of help, I think, to a lot of different people. Appreciate you sharing that. As I was getting ready to talk to you, Julio, on a site, psychologytoday.com, I found some research that shows that the key to healing from traumatic stress is telling your own story. I was recalling a period in my past where that was the big hang up. I had mentors tell me you can't talk. I was in an organization where we had a spokesperson, so we had to let the organization spokesperson tell the story. And for me, that was quite difficult because I needed to tell it myself. So this research I just found reminded me of that period in my life. I wanted to check in with you. Why is telling our own story so very important if we want to heal and recover from times behind us that might not have been so great?
Uh, Nobody knows you better than you. Nobody knows best whatever happened to you than you, right? And it can help you with trauma. And I just want to say, a disclaimer: get to know how you're feeling and how ready you are for that storytelling. There are people who start engaging in therapy with a professional to be able to go through those processes, right? But like in a storytelling, that you have the opportunity to revisit what it was and like think about, like, yeah, I remember when I walk down the street, the sounds, the memories that like trigger some of my trauma, seeing certain things. Like, you can go back and be like, am I ready to confront some of those traumas, as well as to give you an outside perspective of, like, this is my story, but it doesn't have to remain the story that I keep repeating. That's the story that gave me the tools to be who I am, right? Like honoring the resilience. And sometimes people say, oh, inspired. It's not just inspired, but because of what we went through, that we become the people that we are today. And although there are horrible things that happen to us through trauma, also looking at those stories that we write or we tell, we talk to a therapist, we put it in a book, whatever that way is, to help us realize that in spite of everything that happened, I was able to look inside with different eyes, to have the ability to overcome and to be who I am today.
So powerful, Julio. So incredibly powerful. I'm learning and talking to people like you and doing a little research on my own that journaling is actually very, very good for the brain. How so?
Well, it's an exercise, right? We need exercise for um, the rest of the body. We need to make sure that we keep engaging, and not only that, I mean, it helps to reduce anxiety. It's very therapeutic because now it's not, as I said before, it's not that thought that is festering in your head. You're able to put it on a piece of paper and give it to it, right? It also inspires to look at, like, hey, I can share this ability. There's groups of people who share whatever happens in their journaling, or take the opportunity to evaluate how I'm doing today. Like, one of the things that is very important to me is to have gratitude about living the day to day, to have the ability to overcome all those things. So sometimes I look at my journal, I'm like, wow, the fact that I'm here today, the fact that I'm alive, I had to be thankful. I had to be grateful. And also, what can I do to help other people overcome all of this? And I try to journal a little bit at night because it's kind of once again like I give it to the journal, right? I do meditation, I do prayer, I journal, and I just go, there it is. It doesn't have to stay in my head and spin around.
Before we dig into this, some of this brain chemistry stuff, you just mentioned gratitude. So I want to touch on that because a lot of people use a gratitude journal. Those became kind of popular a few years ago. I'll share, Julio, the first time I tried to do that, I'm embarrassed to say this now, but I had trouble. I remember sitting there thinking, I was supposed to come up with 5 things I was grateful for that day. And I struggled one particular night. And the breakthrough night was when it came to me, something that you just said. I'm grateful that I made it through the day. Yes, it was a tough day, but I made it and I am here and I'm in a safe bed in a safe house and I'm about to go to sleep. And I had my 5 things done just like that. So journaling can really, I love the way you put it. You can kind of, I think of it kind of as a dumping. You can dump it out, get it out of your brain, get it out of your heart, get it out of your spirit, put it on a piece of paper, go to bed. I love it.
And don't ever feel embarrassed or shame or anything about like not being able to come up with like 5, 6 things that we're grateful about because that's the way we're uh, trained, educated, or socialized, whichever way you want to look at it, right? Um, I have a conversation with people sometimes about like we are really ready to look at the negative things, but we rarely pay attention to all the other things. And it may be a survival mechanism, it may be the way we're socialized. But like when you leave your house and you're gonna go to the store, you're gonna go to Starbucks, and it's like within walking distance of your office, your house, whatever it is. Like if you really pay attention to every single thought, it will be maddening, right? Like your brain has to tell you, we're gonna go down the stairs, and when we exit the building door, we're gonna make a left, and we're gonna get to the corner. We have to cross, and then we're gonna blah, like every single step that your brain thinks. But all of a sudden, you run into somebody that you had a bad experience with, or somebody you heard yelling at somebody else the week before, and they're on the other side of the street, and they happen to look your way, and your brain gets fixated on that. That's a mean person, and if they look at me, it's because they're criticizing me, they're making fun of me, or they're saying something to somebody about me. So all of this is like things that we're programmed to do. We forget about the beautiful tree, the roses that were on the side, somebody who had a little planter, the person who smiled at you when you walk. So it's like doing that exercise about like, I'm not just gonna pay attention to the negative things that happen, but I'm gonna pay attention and exercise my brain to recognize the positive and the beauty of everyday life.
Hmm. If you would, sir, why don't you join me on this platform for Brother Be Well? Let's have a cold conversation about gratitude. I think it'd be powerful.
Absolutely.